Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We will be singing the Black National Anthem. Please join in if you know. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our eyes high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you. And then if I can help somebody, okay. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with the words of the song, if I can show somebody who is living wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I sing this song, then my living shall not be in vain. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. One more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Savante Myrick, and I'm the president of People for the American Way. And thank you. And though it is such a pleasure to be here with so many friends, with the SEIU, with the American Federation of Teachers, with Public Citizen, with so many terrific organizations, it's a pleasure to be here with you, but I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we would rather not be here at all. That we have issues we got into this work to fight for. We got people that we got into this work to fight for. And none of us could have imagined that even as late as 5 years ago, that we would have to fight for the very right for democracy to exist. That we would have to fight. I'll speak for myself. Personally, I got into politics and elected office. I just finished 15 years of elected office in Ithaca, New York, where I served as the mayor of the city of Ithaca. One Ithacan somewhere in the back. And it's gorgeous. Thank you. Ithaca is gorgeous. And I ran for office in Ithaca because I wanted to fight for people like me who grew up in a homeless shelter, was born and raised in a homeless shelter, was able to make it to Cornell just so that I could fight for housing issues. And I'm very proud of what we did in Ithaca to build more housing, to change our drug policy, to reform our police department. But to wake up and find that all of those things can be changed by an angry mob directed by a vindictive loser of a president attacking the heart of our democracy, that mob was threatening not just to install the president they wanted, but was fighting to take away all of your rights to choose, right, control over your own bodies, over how your schools are run, over how your housing works. Everything that we got into this work to fight for could be taken away if these insurrectionists have their way. And so we are all here today against our own will and against our own wishes. We are here today because this is the fight that matters most. If we can't choose our own leaders, we can't do anything else. So I am really thrilled to be here not only with all of these great organizations and with our members of Congress and with the Dr. King family. I am really thrilled to be here today with a great partner and leader in this fight, and I want to introduce you to Lisa Gilbert of Public Citizen. Please give it up for Lisa.
Thanks, Savante, and so fantastic to be here with all of you. I want to add my welcome to everyone who's able to be here with us, as well as those joining remotely, watching online. We are gathered today because we have to. We're gathered because we have to solemnly reflect on what happened to our nation exactly 2 years ago, and we need to together plan how to move our democracy forward in America. January 6th was a violent and deadly attack on all Americans. It was an attack on our country, on our democracy, on our freedom to vote. So this January 6th, exactly 2 years later, we need to come together across the nation to remember those who are lost on this very spot, on that terrible day, and honor their memories. And not only are we gathering here in D.C., but we are at 100 events nationwide to do the same, to think about the meaning of the word democracy and the fact that here in America, voters decide who our elections. So we get to choose the leaders that represent us. We're a government of, by, and for the people. 2 years ago, a violent insurrection based on a big lie attempted to stand in the way of that ideal, and they failed. And we're not going to let anything stand in its way going forward. As you all know, the bipartisan January 6th Select Committee recently finished their incredible, wide-ranging work, their investigation into the root causes of the insurrection. Coming out of that work, they made the obviously needed criminal referrals of Donald Trump, John Eastman, and others to the Department of Justice. The culpability of those bad actors is crystal clear, and the crimes that were committed that day cannot go unpunished. Thanks. That's right. The committee also made incredible legislative and executive branch recommendations, policies that will improve our democracy going forward. And so now we are looking to our elected leaders, to the White House, to move forward on those democracy reforms, the things that will protect our country as anti-democratic forces continue to align and try to destroy it. So I am again honored to be here with the President for People for American Way, with all of our incredible allies, to gather and honor the memories of those we lost. So with that, we're going to launch right into our program, starting with Representative John Sarbanes. He is an incredible democracy champion. He represents Maryland's 3rd District. He chairs the Democracy Reform Task Force, and he is the original assembler of H.R. 1, the seminal democracy reform bill, the For the People Act.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. I got bumped a little bit in the program because I need to get into that building to say the name Hakeem Jeffries when my name... I've said it 12 times in the last 3 days, and I'm going to keep saying it as long as it takes. But shortly you'll be hearing from the King family, and I want to certainly thank them because they are at every single rally, every single part of this movement and coalition. They've been at the center at it as a leading voice, and we deeply, deeply appreciate that. This is a sober day, as Lisa said. We look back on what happened 2 years ago, the violation of this citadel of democracy, the U.S. Capitol, behind us with this insurrection, the rioters And I do want to just take a moment and pay tribute to the officers and others who protected me that day and my colleagues and protected that building, 5 of whom lost their lives on that day. We remember them and we salute their families and we thank them for their sacrifice. So we remember January 6th. We understand the legacy of that day and what it means going forward. We can't forget that. We have to continue to prosecute those who were responsible for it. Accountability has to be at the center of our efforts, and we look to the U.S. Justice Department to make good on that promise to the people, and we're going to continue to push that forward. Sadly, I was just saying a moment ago, there's a jarring symmetry because today and over the last couple of days, there's been another disrespecting of the institution by a group of extreme lawmakers who right now are holding us hostage and our ability to act and function and legislate on behalf of the American people. And it has to be said and observed that most of the people who are holding things up in there right now, those extremists, are people who are also apologists for the insurrectionists 2 years ago. So draw your own conclusions from that. But it suggests that our democracy continues to be under assault. And that's why we have to continue as well to push back. So as we look to the future, this coalition that you all made happen, that you keep lifting up, is going to be consequential in making sure that democracy reform, fortifying our democracy, stays front and center, that it is a priority. In the midterms, the people of this country, by rejecting election deniers in every state across the country, made it clear that democracy was on the ballot, and they want us to continue at the state level, the local level, but certainly here in Washington, to press for those reforms that can fortify and strengthen our democracy. William Cullen Bryant, who was a great abolitionist, theologian, philosopher, once said, and this was quoted often by Dr. King, that truth crushed to the earth will rise again. Well, they tried to crush truth 2 years ago on January 6th. There's a group in there now trying to crush truth again. But we know that truth will rise and that we will achieve our goal of fortifying our democracy, and it will happen because of your efforts. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Give it up one more time on such a busy day for the Congressman for taking the time to join us. We are so lucky. We are so blessed to be joined by our next speaker, the eldest son of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Martin Luther King III is a thought leader on the world stage. He's a peacemaker, a negotiator on some of today's most critical national and international platforms for social change. He's been building and amplifying the work of his father. Mr. King has devoted his life to promoting global human rights and eradicating racism, violence, and poverty, really truly earning a reputation as a respected international statesman. Please welcome one of the world's most passionate advocates for the poor and oppressed, Mr. King. Thank you so much for joining us. And Andre King, can I introduce? Would you like me to introduce you as well? Okay, please. Okay, so we got even luckier. Can I tell you, we are even more blessed because Andrea Waters King, she's dedicated her life to public service as well. She's a passionate leader in the global fight against inequity, injustice, against hate crimes, and all forms of pain. Throughout her life, if you watched her, you've seen that she's closely worked on behalf of those marginalized, particularly through the DMI. So you know the Drum Major Institute, really incredible work through her presidency of the Drum Major Institute. We are thrilled to have both Kings here. Please give it up one more time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Good morning. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Not because of what happened 2 years ago, but for all of the people since that day who have continued to be beacons for peace, for justice, for equity, and for our democracy. You know, I'm here as an activist, but I'm also here first as a mother. At a time when civics have been taken out of our classrooms, at a time when history is being taken out of our classrooms, the fact that our children's very first examples of government is not about the greatness of America, but it was about the destruction of America. And I think it's also important to realize that when Martin Luther King Jr. talked about his dream, and he talked about his 4 little children, he only has one granddaughter, our daughter, Yolanda Renee King. And she's 14 years old. I can't imagine what he would think that that granddaughter has progressively lost rights since she was born, the rights in which he and her grandmother, Coretta Scott King, and so many others worked and dedicated their lives to. What we saw here 2 years ago was a physical attack on our democracy. But what we have seen since then in some ways is even more insidious. We've seen the structural attack on our democracy. We are seeing laws that should lift us all up being used to limit and roll back hard-won rights. We're seeing Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter now with less voting rights than the day that she was born. And let me make it plain for you. She was born in 2008. Since she was born, what was left of the Voting Rights Act has continually been chipped and diminished. We live in the state of Georgia. So she lives in a state in 2020 that passed one of the most draconian examples of voting rights legislation. She also lives in a state and a country where she has less rights as a female than she had a year ago. That is not the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. nor Coretta Scott King. And this year, as we are going to be celebrating in August, the 60th anniversary of one of the greatest demonstrations, the greatness of America, the greatness of democracy, it is our hope, it is our desire that we as a nation, we as a people, once and for all fully realize the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King talked about each generation having to feed the flames of peace, of justice, and equity. And I hope that as we go back at our homes today, we ignite within our soul and hearts and renew ourselves to continuing to feed the flames of peace, of justice, and equity. Because no matter what it looks like, no matter how long it takes, truth and justice always has won, always will win. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to say that I am honored to be here, but I'm really saddened to be here on the anniversary 2 years ago that American citizens came to the United States Capitol with the intent of destroying our government. It is said that a people that do not remember their history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. That was tragic history 2 years ago. we have to figure out how do we build, not destroy, not tear down. In fact, what Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King taught us was how we can disagree without being disagreeable. Every demonstration that my father was involved in and my mother were involved in were nonviolent and peaceful demonstrations. You see, humankind is God's highest creation. But yet we seem to devolve to lower animal form sometimes to resolve conflict. We are better than the behavior that was exhibited back then. And so today we are here to talk about how do we continue to build democracy. Dad talked about also a voteless people being a powerless people. And one of the most important steps that we must take is that short step to the ballot box. We're having another election again. Well, somewhere in this country every year we do. But we should always engage in building and expanding democracy. But it takes us, the people, to do that. The congressman just shared with us what's happening right behind us. We never seen this in 160-something plus years, where we can't even elect a speaker so that the people's business in the lower house can be handled. And I guess we have to ask the question, what are the people going to do? Because when we're engaged, change occurs. But when we sit by idly, nothing can happen. I can't imagine that if my mother and father were living, that they would not be calling forth on us as people coming together. We know there is a maybe silent majority. There's a majority that must stand up, that must keep moving forward, so that all of these issues that Andrea just enumerated can be addressed. I never thought or could have imagined that our daughter would have less rights today than she had when she was born, right as President Obama was being elected and later on inaugurated. And she has less rights. Something needs to tell us that there's something wrong in this land. There's something wrong, and there's something, however, that we can do about it. It only takes, my dad and others showed us, and my mother, a few good women and men to bring about change. Doesn't necessarily take masses. Just a few who are willing to say, I'm going to be there until we get this right. We can be a great nation, but we're not there yet. This will be the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. And we will work to realize the dream. And we're going to invite the nation to join us as we once again talk about all the rights that not only people deserve, but rights that people inherently should be enjoying. I know we are a better society than we're behaviorally exhibiting now. But I want to urge you to stay on this battlefield. Just a few of us here today, but that's not reflective of what's in the hearts and minds of many. So keep fighting. Keep standing for truth. Keep standing for justice. Don't give in. Don't give up. Don't give out. We are going to make America truly the great nation that it ought to be for all Americans. Thank you, and God bless all of you always.
Let's give another round of applause. They were fantastic. So now I have the honor of representing someone who truly wanted to be with us today but was unable to join. You all know him as the representative of Maryland's 8th Congressional District. Someone who was prominently placed on the January 6th Select Committee is the new ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Representative Jamie Raskin. So he sent along an incredibly eloquent, long, amazing statement to read. I have gotten permission to read just an excerpt, just the beginning, but I want to flag that it'll be released after this, and you can see his full remarks. To my friends, I'm sorry I can't be there with you, and only doctor's orders would keep me away. January 6th was the first time in American history that coup plotters and insurrectionists attacked the constitutional transfer of power in Congress and almost overthrew a presidential election. Trump and his accomplices made common cause with extremist groups steeped in racism and hell-bent on insurrection, assembled a mass of followers into a giant surrounding crowd, and mesmerized them with the big lie, incited the mob into a blinding anti-democratic fury, unleashed them on his own vice president and the joint session of Congress as we counted electoral college votes at the Capitol, and continued to inflame his followers throughout the riot and praise them effusively afterwards, giving them aid and comfort all the way until today. We survived because of people like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who refused to commit election fraud by just finding Donald Trump 11,780 votes. People like Shay Moss, who did the essential work of being an election official in the face of vicious attacks. People like Arizona Secretary of State Rusty Bowers, who refused to exchange his constitutional oath of office for a mafia-style oath of Donald Trump and cowardly kingdom of fraud, deceit, and depravity. We were saved by the astounding courage of people in law enforcement, like Sergeant Gonell and officers Michael Fanone, Hodges, and Dunn. We were saved by political leaders, like Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democratic Caucus Chairman Hakeem Jeffries, and Republican Conference Chair Liz Cheney, who refused to back down in the face of violent insurrection. The heroes of this debacle insisted upon respecting and implementing the will of the people as expressed through our constitutional system. So I will stop there. Again, multiple pages that he wants to share with all of you, but he wanted to make sure that you all know that his thoughts are with us as we gather today to fight for democracy and honor the memories of January 6th. Thanks, everyone.
Forgive me, I was talking to the Kings. I just am still not used to it. So I was 24 years old when I was elected mayor. I was pretty impressed with myself, even though nobody else was. This next woman knocks my socks off, and hopefully all of yours. Her name is Addison Rose. She's the youth mayor of D.C., and she was just re-elected to her second term. She's passionate about youth advocacy, voting rights, many, many other things. A very impressive young woman. Please welcome youth mayor Addison Rose.
Good afternoon. My name is Addison Rose, and I currently serve as the youth mayor here in Washington, D.C. I would like to thank People for the American Way for inviting me to stand here on this site and pay homage to the lives lost and traumatized due to a breach in our democracy. On December 8th, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed the nation after the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor. In this address, he gave one of the most iconic quotes ever from an American president, saying, "Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy." On January 6, 2021, a new date arose which will forever live in infamy, when our American center of democracy was taken over by people who wanted to alter and stop the process of democracy we hold dear in our nation. Today, We are here to reflect on the senseless and violent attacks on our Capitol and democracy 2 years ago. Not only did the aftermath of the attack leave the federal government to cover $1.5 million in damages, but more importantly, the innocent lives of the people we call heroes ended up taking their lives because of the emotional trauma they suffered. This idea of emotional damage hits close to home for many of us, but it also hits close to home as this occurred right here on the site which we stand, but more importantly for the more than 700,000 of us, it happened in our city. For some of us, even right down the street. This is why it is imperative that we excise our vote to make sure we are electing leaders in our country who will protect and steer us in the right direction, not encourage us to act in an aggressive manner. We need to vote more people that share that ideals that are laid out in our Constitution and are committed to upholding our Constitution. This was not the case 2 years ago. It is only when we have done everything in our power, like voting, that we can blame everyone but ourselves. We must take accountability in some degree. Personally, I recently turned 18, and with that, I will make sure I vote in every election, as the future of our country stands on the shoulders of our actions. The more we can get out the vote, encouraging others that their voice in a vote does make a difference, the farther we get from disappointment. Similarly, the lack of power district government officials experienced on January 6th showed us once again why DC deserves its right to be a state. It proved how powerless local officials felt as they were unable to excise the District of Columbia Army National Guard due to our mayor, Muriel Bowser, having no control over them. This caused her to wait an entire 3 hours until local troops were given approval from the Army. We have control over nothing, yet the heart of our country resides in Washington, D.C. I say all of this to say, we can never forget the lives that were lost in the Capitol defending the members of the House and the Senate. This speaks to the fact that we can never again allow our country to become so divided that our president is able to get people to attempt and overthrow our government and not accept the results of an election. Lastly, we must do more to see better results. I implore you to take action and charge in this long but necessary fight for our democracy, for our country. Vote, support DC statehood, and make sure those around you understand its importance as well. The more we do now to ensure the future of our country is bright, the farther away we are from violent attacks like we saw 2 years ago. Thank you. Can you grab that? Thank you. Ooh, thank you.
Thanks so much. So now I'm thrilled to bring up Noor Mir. She's a DC-based activist, first-generation immigrant, and proud Muslim feminist. Over the years, she's organized countless direct actions and national marches, mobilizing thousands of people around immigrant rights, climate justice, and abortion access. She's here today as the DC spokesperson for the Women's March. Noor.
How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me and Women's March to speak here today, and for all of your critical work to defend our democracy. Let's start off with reiterating one simple, clear truth. Fighting for our democracy means protecting our right to and expanding our access to abortion. Democracy is a political system that is dependent on only one thing: respecting the will of we the people. And democracy does not exist if we can be deprived of the fundamental freedom to choose what to do with our bodies, our labor, our families, and our futures. Yet, here we are. We are living in a democracy that has been hijacked by legions of extremists recruited by, encouraged by, and mobilized by Donald Trump. And they are relentlessly attacking our fundamental rights, our trans siblings' right to exist, our children's right to learn history in schools, and our right to free and fair elections, our right to choose when to start a family. They must be held accountable. The people who climbed these walls right behind us 2 years ago are no strangers to abortion providers and advocates across the country who, in the wake of the attacks, spotted familiar faces. Leaders of anti-abortion groups, violent protesters, domestic terrorists, and serial harassers. A man who bombed an Ohio clinic in 1985 was filmed on the scene on January 6th, declaring proudly his love for Donald Trump. A West Virginia politician was present too, who harassed providers and patients at the only clinic in the state so often that they had to build a 10-foot tall fence to protect themselves from him. And these white supremacist extremists have made it a point since to be even more violent towards abortion providers. In 2021, it was found that assaults on abortion clinic employees and patients had increased, as well as bomb threats. Pro-choice rallies have seen a rise in armed militias confronting and agitating protesters. So let's be clear. The people who climb these walls right behind us are the same people who stand outside abortion clinics, film patients, plant bombs, stalk providers, and show up at rallies with AR-15s. These extremists are one and the same, and they're the same people who voted for Trump and other extremist Republicans who are dead set on continuing to burn down abortion access state by state. Donald Trump and his co-conspirators must be held accountable for the violent uprising that they incited and are directly responsible for. The recent criminal and ethics referrals are a necessary next step, and it is now up to the Justice Department, the courts, and the Ethics Committee to do their job. We can't stop, and we must continue to work together to protect our fundamental freedoms, including our right to choose our own leaders and our right to choose what we want to do with our bodies. At Women's March, we worked around the clock in battleground states to reject extremist Republicans and protect our freedoms. And we will not stop now. Republicans in the House will continue to assault democracy and attack women. They will introduce federal legislation to ban abortion. But we will stop them like we stopped them in Kansas and Michigan and Kentucky and California. And we will fight as long as it takes to restore all of our rights. And I believe that we will win. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Christina Harvey, we're very lucky. She serves as the executive director of Stand Up America. Not like comedy, this organization could not have a more clear, more simple, more powerful mission. What's the mission? To demand the democracy that we deserve. So please, you're all already standing, please stand up for Christina Harvey, the executive director of Stand Up America.
Thank you. Hi, as he said, I'm Christina Harvey, the executive director of Stand Up America, and I'm proud to be standing up with you all today on behalf of our nearly 2 million members across the country who have been fighting for years to protect and expand our democracy and our freedom to vote. I want to thank the Not Above the Law Coalition and the DFAD Coalition for organizing today's event and for all the amazing speakers that we've heard from so far today, and especially to all of you who are standing out here in the freezing cold because you care so much about our democracy. We are here today to remember the horrific attack on our nation. We're here to honor the people who stood up for our democracy and refused to let the insurrectionists prevail. And we are also here to recommit ourselves to the work ahead to ensure that we never see another dark day like January 6th again in our country. I just want to give a shout out to the work of our members over the last year who worked hard to prevent the next January 6th. From working to elect democracy-defending secretaries of state who would uphold the will of voters, to passing state and local laws to protect our freedom to vote and our democracy, to logging thousands of calls and emails to reform the Electoral Count Act, and submitting over 5,000 letters to the editor of their local papers, educating their communities about the findings of the January 6th Select Committee, that Trump and his cronies planned and promoted a criminal conspiracy to undermine the results of an election they knew they had lost. Now, voters turned out last year, and they voted to protect democracy, in spite of political pundits telling us again and again that democracy wasn't important to American voters. But we organized, we did the work, we spread the word, and we proved them wrong. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods, though. As we've seen over the last week, what the chaos that's taking place in the House of Representatives right now is just a symptom of the ongoing threat to our democracy. Right now, MAGA extremists control the House of Representatives. In fact, 2 years ago today, 135 of the current members of the House were here voting against certifying the Electoral College victory of Joe Biden, so that they could keep Trump in power in spite knowing he had lost, and after they were forced to flee from a violent mob that had been called to Washington by Trump himself. And in fact, 70% of the members of the GOP in the current Congress are election deniers. That's something that should concern anyone who cares about our democracy and our freedom to vote. Well, it should come as no surprise that these extremists care more about their own personal and political power than they do about the will of the American people or actually governing. That they're more focused on escaping accountability than actually upholding our Constitution. Some of them have already indicated that their first priority in 2023 will be to investigate anyone who has tried to hold them accountable through sham investigations, including the staff and representatives who faithfully served on the January 6th committee. And one of their first actions, if they can ever figure out who their speaker is and actually do anything else, one of their first actions will be to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, which is the body that actually investigates and roots out corruption within the ranks of the House. So what do? Well, 3 things. First, we are here today to demand accountability. The January 6th committee made criminal referrals, including for Trump himself, to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice and the courts must hold the people for January 6th accountable. And not just the foot soldiers, but the general himself, President Trump. Second, we can't go quietly into the night. We must continue to call out the lies of election deniers, to push back against sham investigations and attempts to avoid accountability, and push back against any further efforts to undermine our democracy. And third, we can't forget about the states. We're here today in front of the U.S. Capitol, but there are 50 state capitals across this country, and we need to make sure that we, our members, and our constituents are reaching out and talking to everyone who's in those state capitals, whether it's Minnesota, where they've just introduced a sweeping new pro-democracy package, or it's Illinois to finally pass voting rights restoration for people who are incarcerated, or Florida, where Ron DeSantis is continuing to attempt to criminalize voting. We at Stand Up America will continue to be in that fight together with all of you. So let me just close by reminding us that we are not a country of I. We are a country of we. We, the people. We are not here for ourselves. We are here for our children. We are here for our neighbors. We are here for our communities, for our families. And some of the elected officials in this country seem to have forgotten that critical part of our Constitution. We, the people, demand accountability. We, the people, will continue fighting to protect our freedom to vote. And we, the people, will continue organizing until we have a truly representative democracy. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. That's a great message, powerful. And to bring up our next speaker, I'm excited to have Tashawn Warasaria. He is the Democracy Campaign Representative at the Sierra Club. His role is to help steer Sierra Club's millions of members of support and supporters into understanding the real connections between the fight for a healthy planet, healthy environment, and the fight for democracy. So Tashawn, come on up.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? Good. Everyone staying warm? Whose toes are starting to freeze? Because I know mine are. Lisa, thank you so much for those kind remarks. I also want to thank Alana Beller, Rio Tazwell, Cecilia Bernard, and so many others for organizing this tremendous event and so many other events across the entire nation. Look, I'll be honest, it's hard to believe that January 6, 2021 was 2 years ago. It's hard to believe that much time has passed. But I vividly remember and witnessing that day and how pure lies can incite a mob to attack our Capitol building. This was an attack unique in the history of our country. And I want us to think about that for a moment. Think about that for the first time in history, 246 years, the peaceful transfer of power did not occur when it was scheduled to occur. That is the history of that day. I also just vividly recall seeing the images of hatred on the faces of people breaking into the building, knowing well in my heart that if they were a different skin color or wearing turbans on their head, the outcome and the narrative would be so much different. I also recall just vividly just the Confederate flags swinging freely in the People's House. Never I've seen that before, and that just burned in my mind and burned in so many millions of people across this country and across this world as well. But that is the history that we have to contend with. That is the history of that day. That is the history that will be taught to our children and to our grandchildren. But one thing I want to make sure, and what I hope everyone understands, is that that does not have to be our destiny. That not only that does not have to be my destiny. One of the words that I want to focus on is accountability. For us as a nation, we cannot heal unless we have accountability. And that also means not just for the foot soldiers, for the people that actually incited this attack, whether it's Donald Trump or so many other members of Congress and co-conspirators. We have to hold them accountable if we expect to heal as a nation. And this also means enforcing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This is so important, and we must use every tool we have in our tool chest to ensure accountability actually occurs. And I know we're all cold, so I'll just close out by saying I just want to send a note of appreciation to all of you as well. I know this fight for democracy has been long, infuriating, frustrating at times, but it warms my heart and brings a smile to my face seeing how many people constantly come out and constantly fight to support a vibrant democracy. I hope as we move in the future that this family stays together and we continue this fight as well. So thank you again. Appreciate you all. Take care.
Our next speaker is another young person putting all of us to shame. Mariah Cooley is not just a student here at Howard. She is a young person who, when gun violence impacted her family, taking the life of her cousin, she didn't just get mad. She didn't just agonize. She organized. She founded a local chapter of Our Lives for Gun Safety at Howard University, and she now serves on the national chapter of Our Lives. Please welcome this exciting young new leader, Mariah Cooley.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mariah, and I serve as a board director for March for Our Lives. Our democracy is under attack now more than ever. As young people, we're told our power is in our vote, but here we are. We've used our power and we've used our vote, yet there's people in office who are trying to stop it every single day. I'm here with March for Our Lives because young people, we have a lot to lose. We often say it's only a matter of time. It's not if in America, it's when. There were over 600 mass shootings in the past year, and I don't accept that, and you shouldn't have to accept that either. No other country in this world experiences this form of terror and violence. The problem only exists in America, and it's getting worse. We have a right to live, and we have a right to live without the fear of gun violence. We have a right to be in our homes, in our churches, in our grocery stores, in our movie theaters, in our neighborhoods, and in our schools, and not worry about a bullet. That is our right. Thank you. Right now, our country's liberties are at risk. I remember what it felt like to be in this city 2 years ago today, to watch right extremists and white supremacists attack our country. I remember what it felt like as a black woman, more as a black teenager when it happened, and wondering what would happen next. Would I be targeted? Is everyone in this building going to be okay? What is America coming to, and what will it look like tomorrow? Because let's be very honest. If the insurrectionists looked like me, the situation would have gone a lot differently. And we know this after the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests across the country, when black people were fighting for the right to not have to deal with police brutality, and we were met with tear gas and rubber bullets and harassment. But even despite all of this, I still had hope. I had hoped that we had moved on from a society that did not value the importance of our democracy, but oh, was I proven wrong. For the first time in 100 years, there is no functioning Congress. If that does not scare you, then I don't know what will. Right now, we have those in office who are preventing for the people elected who want to do real work from serving their constituency. And that is why every election is so important, and it goes beyond the voting booth. We must hold our local, state, and federal leaders accountable to push to protect our freedoms, our right to live, our right to know that when I go into my school, my church, my grocery store, that there isn't an AR-15 waiting for me. We must ban assault weapons now. We must ensure what happened here 2 years ago will never happen again. And we will no longer be held hostage by corrupt lawmakers, and we will no longer tolerate feeling unsafe in our communities. We must condemn all those who are involved in the insurrection, and we must continue in this fight and this march for our life. Thank you.
So many incredible, inspiring people here with us today. That message, let's just give her another round of applause. So next up, we're going to hear from the National Organizing Director for Common Defense. Yeah. Common Defense, for those who don't know, is a grassroots movement of progressive veterans. I want to bring up JoJo Sweat.
Democracy is at risk, and we are here to defend it. We, the people, have the power. Veterans all week have been on the Hill engaging with MAGA extremists to demonstrate just that. And they won't even take the time to answer the questions of their constituents. Veterans will continue to pressure state and local elected officials to protect all rights, and we will demand to expand those rights to our disenfranchised and marginalized communities to make our democracy true and to ensure that that access isn't gerrymandered away forever by MAGA extremists. You see, veterans are not carve-outs. We come from your communities. We are your mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, daughters, sons, and more. We are the microcosm of America. What is happening to us is happening to you, and what is happening to you is happening to us. Veterans of Common Defense are reminding the people that attacks on our democracy and our freedoms are absolutely unacceptable. Our oath matters. Our democratic values matter. Voting matters. We put our lives on the line in service of this nation. Many of us sacrificed. We will uphold that commitment as veterans and as patriots. We stand in solidarity with you, our greater community, to protect that commitment. The January 6th Select Committee has pursued hundreds of interviews, reviewed thousands of documents, and held witnesses in criminal contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate. This criminal conspiracy extends well beyond the violence that was perpetuated on January 6th, 2 years ago, that injured over 140 police officers. That conspiracy making it harder for people to vote, attempting to appoint fraudulent electors to overturn the will of the voters, and intimidating state officials that wanted to change election results in contested states. The committee has laid out evidence in great detail. Americans have heard the truth for themselves. I am a disabled veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I served nearly 10 years. I am an Iraq war veteran. I swore an oath, the same oath my African American father swore when he joined the United States Air Force to be a free man. That same oath our president swore, our elected officials swore. And that oath, it never expires. Voting in America should be the easiest thing we all have access to do. And sadly, it's our politicians who swore that same oath as our service members who stand in the way of that democracy and today still hold it hostage. Make no mistake, we were definitely under attack on January 6th. And we stand together now, united 2 years later, to ensure that that shit never happens again. That was the most clear-cut, calculated attack on our democracy. Anti-voter bills were introduced in 47 states after that. Wake up. Elected officials continue to spread the big lie, and many of them were present on January 6th, that fateful day. Their allegiances to spread that big lie and dismantle our nation's democracy is reason enough for us to categorize them as traitors, terrorists. The people have spoken through their votes time and time again. Donald Trump is no longer our president. We, the people, get to decide, and we did that through our votes. January 6th was a practice run. It was a coup to thwart our democracy. The only way to a better future is for us to hold those participators accountable to the full letter of the law. It's time to build back better collectively as a nation, or we will forever be compromised and broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dr. Ravi Perry, current professor of political science at Howard and board member of DC Vote. We are so glad that Dr. Perry is joining us today. He's an expert on black politics, minority representation, urban politics, American public policy, and LGBT candidates of color. We welcome Dr. Perry to the stage. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon. So I'm the last speaker, so we get warm after this. I'm Ravi. I have the privilege of representing DC Vote, the oldest, the baddest, the biggest, the longest statehood organization here in the District of Columbia that needs to be a state. I had the privilege of being vice chair of the board, and we have many of our staff members here. If you don't mind waving, saying hello, we want to make sure that you put us out of business. So 2 years ago, they brought a noose here, a few steps from here, for a lynching. You know that they killed 5 police officers. We already know that because of no statehood, our mayor didn't have the power to stop the onslaught on our country by calling the National Guard. We know that they scaled the House chamber with military-style rock climbing ropes. They ransacked offices. They brought a Confederate flag, the symbol of anti-Americanism and racial terror, to the Capitol for the first time since the Civil War. But since it's January, and we celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this month, I invoke him again, as many others have today, to remind us that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And we are here today because we love. We love our country, even when it falls short of our dreams. We love D.C., the chocolate city with blackness rooted deeply from go-go and in every stone laid by an enslaved black person throughout all of our national monuments, including the Capitol in front of you and the White House. But I'm so proud to stand here today on a day that we should not have to stand here, to stand for statehood as a Ward 7 homeowner, and this hallowed ground where our foremothers and forefathers, our aunties, our grannies, our uncles, our parents marched through blood, sweat, and tears, through blisters and fire hoses and police abuse, just so that we could proclaim, as Dr. King did steps away here, that we will celebrate 60 years of this year, later in August. The March on Washington, where he claimed first, when the speech was given, not here, but in June in Detroit, Michigan, with double the amount of people that came here to D.C., by the way. And that speech, he said, we want all of our rights. We want them here, and we want them now. DC Vote has been working to advance statehood equality for over 20 years for residents like me, but for every single American citizen. We don't need a constitutional amendment. We only need a majority vote in the United States Congress. We only need to affirm the For the People Act, and that it must include all people. We must also affirm that any voting rights rallies and legislation efforts must include the fight for statehood in D.C. There is no voting rights in America without the 712,000 residents in the district that ought to be a state to be included. As a political scientist who studies this stuff, I know that government is as good as you and me who choose to participate in it. So yes, statehood is a racial justice issue. Put those signs up. Statehood is a racial justice issue. Absolutely it is. And we stand for statehood because we cannot be instruments of our own oppression. We have to ensure that this city, this district, becomes the 51st state. And I'll borrow from King again to argue as I end here that he said in that same original I Have a Dream speech that God is not interested in the freedom of brown people, yellow people, red people, black people. God is interested in the freedom of the entire human race. God is interested in the representative freedom of the residents of the District of Columbia. We are DC. Say it with me. We are DC. We are DC. And we want all of our rights. And when do we want them? God bless you.
I want to thank you all for being with us on this unusually cold day and really appreciate your patience. I also want to say one of the reasons it's a privilege and an honor to be president of People for the American Way is standing just here to my left. It is Jill and Raquel, Josh and Rocky, Lori, Jerry, Rio, Kawana, Raquel, Marcus, Kristen, Peter, Zach. This is a fraction of our staff, and our staff is a fraction of our power. If you believe like we do, an organization that was founded 4 decades ago by Norman Lear and Barbara Jordan, if you believe that a democracy is the bedrock of all other human rights, if you believe that fighting for that democracy is worthwhile, I encourage you to join our team, join our volunteers, join our family at People for the American Way. And if you can join the coalition that includes the Declaration for American Democracy and the Not Above the Law that put together not just this event, but events all across the country, you will be doing yourself, your family, and this nation a great service. So thank you. We're stronger because of you. We're stronger because we made it out. And I want to hand it off to our partner, our leader in this fight to close us out, Lisa Gobert, once more from Public Citizen.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. I just want to thank you for being here with us today. As many have said, this year, the January 6th committee did us an incredible public service, and now we need to honor it. They proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Trump and his MAGA allies planned, promoted, and paid for a criminal conspiracy to overturn an election that they knew that they lost. And they created a public record that simply cannot be denied. So now we need to make sure we honor that. We fight for all of the democracy reforms we heard called for today, and we make it happen. And I know with all of you, we can succeed. So thank you again for joining us today, again on this chilly day. We're going to close out with a couple of songs, but thank you all. We're going to win.
Give it up for Billy Sanders in the cold, doing it all day.
I'm doing Precious Lord. 2-2. Hello, everyone. Hello. So, my name is Jata Freeman. I am a native Washingtonian, as well as a student at Howard University, as well as the former youth mayor of Washington, D.C. I will be singing a very powerful song by the Mahalia Jackson called Precious Lord, Take My Hand. I'm going to try my best as this wind is trying me. If you know any of the songs that you are about to hear, please join in, but also allow the lyrics to resonate in your hearts and your minds as we understand that we are fighting for not only our freedom, we're fighting for our rights, and we're fighting for our voices, okay? Here we go. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead and let me stand. I am tired. I am weak, and I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord.